Hello, folks. I'm Nick Bernardo, your host of MyGovWatch Live, the B2G Roundtable. If you're east of the Rocky Mountains here in the U.S., good morning or good afternoon. Good morning to those out west, and hello to anyone joining us from the far corners of the earth or watching online in the future. Today is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. This series is brought to you by MyGovWatch.com. MyGovWatch is revolutionizing traditional bid notification by providing RFP leads in more than 200 industries using proprietary artificial intelligence at double the rate of free government sites and at a fraction of the cost of legacy websites. Big government contracts don't start with a solicitation, but all roads lead to one. Your budget for hearing about RFPs does not have to be thousands of dollars per year. Start your free 14-day trial today. And today, our co-host with the co-most is Ashley Duwel. How you doing, Ashley?
Great, Nick. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. And for those of you who do not know Ashley, as CEO of Duwel Dev, she has helped businesses navigate the government marketplace for more than 13 years, both as a coach and through acting as an extension of the client's federal business development team. Specializing in pre-solicitation engagement, relationships, and simplified acquisition strategies, Ashley's approach to contracting is data-driven with a focus on implementation of systems and processes as it relates to your federal sales and marketing activities. With experience as a PTAC Apex Accelerator Counselor, Ashley is well-versed in the challenges businesses face in the federal marketplace. And if you're new to the MyGovWatch Live series, Ashley's background obviously skews towards federal, and that's great because that's a huge part of the marketplace. But certainly my background includes state and local, so we can talk about state and local government contracting as well. So Ashley, I always like to start with a question like this because there's so many different ways that people get involved in government contracting. I'm sure you didn't wake up one day when you were 15 or 16 years old and say, I would like to be a government contracting guru, but somehow that happened. Tell us how that happened.
Well, it's a funny story. I actually was in a past life in the medical field, and I ended up between jobs, and a friend of mine was like, hey, there's this government contracting startup. I don't know a whole lot about government contracting, but there's a sales job open. So I took the job and, went through the training. And the longer I was in the industry, I realized there's way more to this story than what's even scratching the surface. So I started self-educating, and I, the more I learned, the more I realized how in the federal space, a lot of industries work differently when it comes to procurement. Like the leasing space, for example, that area of GSA doesn't even go by the FAR. So really, I had to sort of step away from that environment and tailor my approach to meet the client where they are, rather than the same general basic information that was out there, and required a lot of learning. So I'm now 13 years in, and I'm probably not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, that's fantastic. It's always interesting to me how different people get involved in government contracting. I came in through marketing and proposal development. And that was over 20 years ago. So I'm sure everyone has their own story who's with us this afternoon. So in terms of maybe an appropriate starting point for questions that our audience continues to ask every month, so many people who join MyGovWatch Live are in the same boat, right? So they want to make progress. They would like to make inroads in government contracting. They know that the federal government buys more goods and products than any other buyer of anything on the planet. So they don't know what to do necessarily. So what advice would you give to someone struggling to know what to do next to market to government buyers?
Well, just like when, we build our commercial business, for those of you who are already commercially established, one of the first steps, is supposed to be that business plan, right? And in order to develop that business plan, you've got to segment your markets and know who your customers are. Well, that process of identifying your customers may be slightly different as far as, the tools and resources that you use, but by and large, it's replicating the very same process as when you built your commercial business. So my best advice would be to start with the market research and look at what's already happened recently, maybe within the past 18 months to 2 fiscal years. Identify the top agencies that buy. And once you sort of dive into, getting to know your targeted agencies, their rules and their processes will become more apparent, which makes it easier for you to kind of build relationships, reaching out, sort of knowing as Judy Brad says, the players and the layers, who's who in the agency that you need to know. And it's not enough to really know at the agency level. You should also know at the procurement office level, because what people often forget about federal government contracting is that while we're dealing with the government, they're humans just like you and I. So those marketing and sales 101 principles are still very important in this space.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tremendous answer. And it causes me to sort of reinforce that and make this comment. And I wonder if you agree with it. You said, or you alluded to it earlier, this idea that it's really not intrinsically different than any other sales and marketing process. And I wonder if this is a comment you would agree with. You're just adding a layer on top of that, or a few layers on top of that, which are unique to government. And one of them is simply access to information. And this is a topic that comes up over and over again in MyGovWatch Live, and people who use our site at MyGovWatch.com. They don't have enough information, right? They may even know how to do sales and marketing generally, but there's a deficit of information. So I wonder if you would comment on that, or what you think of that.
There is a bit of a deficit. Not only that, the information is scattered in a lot of different places. So, if I'm, performing a market research, a sales plan for a client, I'm cross-referencing at least 5 different areas to get all the information I need to go into that sales plan. So it's not always clearly defined. And with all the pop-up gurus that are out here preaching, how to be a pass-through, and, if you're not making more than $1 million a year, you're not doing it right. And I say, don't believe everything that you hear online. Focus your efforts on, what makes sense to you. Because when you go to approach, say, the DoD, you already know DFARs are going to come into play, which means you're probably going to have to look into CMMC compliance if you need to gain access to government data like drawings. So getting to know your targeted agencies is really going to allow you to leverage that intel and work that into your marketing. So for example, if I'm reviewing contract data and I see, and this is a real life scenario, I see that instead of saying water purification, this agency uses water filtration. When I reach out to that agency with my capability statement, I'm going to make sure that I differentiate that terminology so that I'm being consistent with their language. It is kind of a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to learning their language. One thing the government loves is their acronyms. So kind of identifying which ones apply to your agencies and how those are used will definitely also be a huge advantage.
For sure. And I'd like to invite our first guest to join us. And I've promoted Alfred to be a co-panelist. Alfred, could you share at least your audio? And for folks who are listening, if you're going to participate with us today, we need your audio. Video makes it even more fun. That's up to you. But Alfred, are you there with us?
I am. Good morning or afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining MyGovWatch Live. So Alfred, where are you? And what do you do? And what would you like to do for government agencies?
What do I do? I just I retired about a year ago from the Navy after 25 years, and I got bored.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I got bored and decided let me try some of the small business stuff, and government contracting seems to make the most sense because I've spent 25 years doing government stuff. And so I'm getting in the process, learning all the different set-asides and processes for pre-solicitation, sources sought, wrapping my head around that. And now I'm about ready to act. And I kind of want to know what the veterans are doing, because I understand that I'm a rookie and there's a lot of stuff I don't know.
Well, we're going to talk about it. And before we get into that, just for the sake of everyone who's with us today, what kind of business do you have and what's the name of it?
Name of the business is Ideal Techs, and we provide a couple different umbrellas of service that we're doing now. One is more electrical. We do HVAC and backup generators. The second piece is landscaping and then exterior facility support. And then a third piece is training and development or leadership dynamics, things like that.
So I looked up what we have on our website in those areas before today's session, and we have over 400 RFPs in those areas that are open right now. But I know you wanted to talk about market research and proposal generation. So Ashley, let me ask you this question. If there were one data source that anyone interested in doing business with the federal government should start with, what would it be and why?
I think that would be usaspending.gov. There is also an alternative now, the SAM Data Bank, although I find USA Spending more user-friendly. And I also like the power to kind of choose what reports I want to run. And it's easier to filter that data, especially when you're just starting out. I would not just focus on veteran set-aside contracts, but do make sure, Alfred, that once you are registered in SAM, that you go through the veteran certification program. It's now under the SBA. It just moved from the VA to the SBA. And if you are over 60% service disabled, you could also have that service disabled designation. One of the huge primary benefits of that program is that there is sole sourceability. So I'm glad that you brought up the sources sought notices and requests for information, because that is the government doing market research. And if it's a sources sought notice, and you and another veteran respond, when it becomes a solicitation, if it becomes a solicitation, that will be set aside. And by doing so, you have now drastically reduced competition when now only veterans can respond to this. So I'm glad that you brought that up and that you're doing your research in advance before kind of diving into RFPs. The next thing I'll say is 70% of what the federal government buys and sells, and that's a rough number, a little dated perhaps, they buy over and over and over again. So a great indication of what they're going to do is what they've already done and what they've done recently. Now, it's important to know that there are different methods of procurement. You know, solicitation is only just one way to get a contract. There are micro purchases, there are simplified acquisitions that are often a lot easier to get started. So what you want to do to set yourself up best for invitations to bid from the government would be, once you're registered in SAM and you're active, make sure that you complete your dynamic small business search profile. That's basically like a contracting officer or a contract analyst Google. And considering the small business liaisons are often the ones to do market research in the agency for the procurement team, it makes sense to be found when they're looking. And that's another way that you can kind of silently and passively influence your market, is just making sure that you're able to be found when they're looking.
So there's just so much, Ashley, that
Yes,
so much wisdom in what you just said. And I just want to stop and sort of ask Alfred here. Alfred, is there a specific question that anything that we've said or that Ashley's just gone over that may come to mind?
That kind of covered the basics. That kind of gave me a direction to run to. Like I knew that there was a small business dynamic database that as you're filling out your SAM profile, it links to that.
yes.
I just didn't know how important it was. I knew it was a thing, but I don't know scalability of volume. Like, hey, put most of your eggs in that basket at first, and then do something else. So, thank you.
And these are things, I mean, there are so many resources out there available to you. The market research aspect is one thing that PTAC helps with. Apex Accelerators, they just rebranded. Every state has an Apex. So on staff, I'm pretty sure every state has at least one CVE on staff that will help you through that veteran-owned business registration at no cost. There is no charge for that, so please don't pay anybody for it. The market research, oftentimes, as a PTAC counselor, I do that with my clients. So let me ask you, what state are you in?
I'm in Texas.
You're in Texas?
Right.
You've got a couple PTACs, and I know that one of the PTACs, I believe it's San Antonio. They do also have a Govology code that they share. Also check into your Veteran Business Outreach Center. Here's another acronym for you. It's called VBOC. VBOC. And they could also be a great resource in the startup phase and helping you sort of form your business model and your assets.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
And so, Alfred, please stay with us. Sometimes our sessions here, go an hour and 15 minutes. They've gone as long as 2 hours. If you think of a follow-up question, just raise your hand and we'll bring you back on camera.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And so, Ashley, before we move on to Jason Hall, I'm wondering, are there any other research tools federally that maybe just didn't come up in relation to Alfred's situation that people should be aware of?
Oh, there are a ton of them. What I like to use most commonly, obviously SAM. If I see an opportunity on the government's forecast, and it's a recompete contract, I'm gonna go pull last year's solicitation from SAM, check out the scope, the requirements. I also like to use GSA eLibrary. One thing that a lot of new contractors don't realize is that when a company is awarded a GSA schedule, their terms, conditions, and pricing become public knowledge. So GSA elibrary.gov would be, or it's elibrary.gsa.gov, I believe, would be a great resource. If you just Google GSA eLibrary, it will come right up. But you could search in there by keyword, by company name specifically. And I also use FPDS. If I'm just trying to quickly find if I'm reaching out to prime contractors and I want to target prime contractors that have business in a certain agency, then I'm going to use FPDS to kind of detect what other agencies do they have business in that agency, how much business, how well established are they with the department I'm going after, and then kind of reverse engineer, because I use a lot of that intel that I gather when I outreach. I want to demonstrate that I've done my homework when I'm trying to build these relationships.
Yeah, there's just so many acronyms, and it's hard for some folks who may be joining us for the first time to just keep all of this straight. So just a reminder, folks, all of this will be available on YouTube after the fact. So I know some of you are anxiously scribbling. You can do that, but you can always come back and find us on YouTube in 3 or 4 days. And before we go further, I just want to remind everyone, you can type questions into the Q&A box and we will get to those as we're able. If you're a little shy or maybe you're not in a good place to turn on audio or video, that's fine. And you can also raise your hand and we'll try to get to you as well. And before we go to Jason Hall, and Jason, we're wanting you to join us. We have a question from Brian Miner, and Brian says, Ashley, help me to identify my market research in the federal market by providing a federal spending report. My question to Ashley, now that I'm getting feedback from the small business offices, what do I do next?
Well, first thing you want to do is definitely follow their feedback and review the procurement forecast, Brian. I'm glad you asked that question. Make sure that for all the agencies that showed up on your report, that you review the forecast, highlight those opportunities that are of interest to you. And in a lot of cases, the forecast will include the contracting officer's contact information. Pretty much the only time I would suggest reaching out to the CO is when you have something specific to discuss, like an upcoming procurement. And, we could go down a rabbit hole here. We could talk about when's the right time between this window and that window. But really in these beginning phases, you want to learn as much as you can. That contracting officer might say, this procurement's going to be an IDIQ contract. You're going to have past performance. If you don't, he or she will often pass your capability statement on to the prime contractor. I have a client just last week who's now on 4 teams for a huge upcoming IDIQ. I won't disclose which or who, but she got on 4 teams just by executing that strategy through the liaison and the contracting team in the agency. So when you start outreaching and kicking over rocks, you never know what might climb out. Might be, a flow down from a prime contractor. It might be, hey, we got the simplified acquisition, would like to try you out. The likelihood of coming out of the gate and winning a multi-million-dollar contract, it happens, but I would assume that happens more often in state and local, wouldn't it, Nick, than in federal. Also, state and local is a great way to start building the past performance that you need to go after the long-term IT contracts. And Brian,
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, one more second. I remember your report. Reach out to those primes and also any prime that is responsible for shipping products to the government. That would be an excellent next step.
And Brian, please stay with us. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to join us live, or if you have additional questions. And without further ado, we'd like to welcome Jason Hall with us today. And Jason, where are you joining us from and what do you do?
Hey, Nick, there we are. Well, the first thing I have to do is figure out how to turn off the mute function. I'm Jason Hall. I'm from Rapid Deployment Solutions. We're headquartered in West Palm Beach, Florida. We're a woman-owned small business. We're an integrator for open text, SAP, and M-Files, mostly almost entirely with the commercial sector. We have a strategic interest to expand our reach into the private sector, the government space. And I think that's what's brought us here today. As you can imagine, for a small business, it's can be challenging to get into the federal space. What I've seen is that it's often easier to kind of partner with one of the bigger guys, CACI, Accenture, NTT Data, things of that nature, because the specialization you might be in as a small business might just be one small component of a larger contract.
Part of a whole, right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so as a small business, we could spend an entire career trying to figure out how to establish these partnerships. So it's challenging, and I think that's what's brought us here today with yourself and Nick, is to better understand, okay, well, what resources, opportunities are available to help us achieve those goals.
Yeah, and Jason, I know we were going to talk a little bit about figuring out how to respond to government RFPs. So one part of this conversation is obviously, how to approach finding federal opportunities. Another is the state and local stuff. And I know there's a lot of activity for what you do locally. And then the execution of that, right? Not just from a sales standpoint, but from a bid process standpoint. Ashley, do you want to start with just some ideas federally on what Jason should be looking at?
So, Jason, you are on the right track. Absolutely. I would definitely look at, and I apologize, I'm definitely not familiar with many acronyms outside of the government contracting arena, but I'm pretty sure you're in the IT space. Is that what that translated to? Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Take a look at the NASA soup. There are 140 incumbents on the NASA soup and pretty much thousands of subcontractors. The contact information for the incumbent on the NASA soup is public information. You also have the VETS 2. That is an IT contract vehicle just for veterans. I would also look at GSA. It used to be Schedule 70. Now it's a mass IT contract. Any of those contract holders. Because here's the thing about subcontracting is it allows you to get your feet wet and learn the ropes. It really does open the door for a lot of agency relationships because, as a subcontractor on the NASA soup, you could be sharing an office with the project manager at DoD. You just really never know who you might meet along the way and what areas that would open up for you to kind of jam your foot in the door as the prime contractor someday. The IT space it's almost always, in my experience, the path of least resistance to start with subcontracting. I have had a couple of clients one client particularly that refused pretty much to do subcontracting. And while their process was longer, they now have a successful federal contract. So but it does keep your expenses lower and allows you, when you build that team with that prime, to utilize the prime contractor's resources. So typically what happens is you work together, you build a relationship with the prime. Usually there's an area to register on their website. So before you do any outreach, go to their website first, look for an area that, and it's all different. Sometimes it says work with us. Sometimes it says supplier registration, subcontractor registration, become a supplier. Look, you're not applying for a job, but you really want to put your company in front of them, right? I always say follow that up with an email to the point of contact as well, and include your capability statement. Anything that you can put in the body of that email that's specific, in the IT soup contract, that's basically a long-term GWAC. It was a 5-year +5 option, and the government exercised the 5 option period. So that contract, the current contract, is going to be in place until 2025. Correct me if I'm mistaken here. I think it's 2025. And then they're going to recompete it. So between now and 2025, make it your mission to get on as many teams and form as many teaming agreements as you can with the likely suspects, because all those companies that are on it now are probably going to bid when it comes back around again, for sure. Does that make sense?
It does. It sounds like a lot of work.
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot of work. Put an assistant on it. Really they're processes, right? You've got step 1, your subcontractor, your market research. You have to know who the primes are. Then your subcontractor registration. Now, some of those get pretty extensive. They want everything except the kitchen sink and your firstborn child. But they'll have a lot of very specific questions about your experience. And what you do have going for you is that you're commercially established. You're not new at this. So use that commercial business and that commercial experience to get your foot in the door. And in a lot of cases, you might be able to utilize that commercial experience on a direct solicitation, and let the solicitation be your format, right? Your proposal format. Put your logo on there, make sure your document's branded, and literally respond to each of their requirements. Another plug for Apex. Contact your local Apex. They provide counseling on this sort of thing. They sort of teach you how to understand what you're reading in these solicitations to set you up to be able to bid yourself, if that's what your mission is. Either way, it's a process. Either direction you go. So,
and does MyGovWatch offer any kind of support in these areas?
Yeah, okay, so our site is mainly providing bid solicitation leads. However, this is something that people should know about from a research standpoint. A lot of folks who join us on MyGovWatch Live may not be aware of something called the open records process. Have you heard of that, Jason?
Yeah, I know it's the open, yeah.
Okay, so we have ancillary services where you're able to use us as a proxy to get information at the solicitation level on what's happening with different bids around the country, not just federally, but state and locally. So as one way of researching and finding out what's happening in your niche, you can have us do open records or FOIA requests to find out what happened with the last 12, SAP integrations in your state or in surrounding states. And you can even get information at the federal level, although it tends to be a little bit more opaque at the federal level. So that's a research mechanism that we provide beyond simply leads. Now, let me ask you this question. To what extent are you interested in federal business development versus everything else? Or do you just want to grow and you don't care where it comes from?
Yeah, so true, all the above. So from my experience, the government can be very frustrating in that you can spend an awful lot of time preparing responses, putting together all of the overly complicated forms and certifications and stuff that they ask for. And maybe less than 10% might return with, asking for a demo, or maybe even only 1% of those leading to an actual contract.
Absolutely. And that's a tremendously dangerous, a soft cost in the entire marketing process. The government is spinning your wheels and spending a lot of money on bid development for things that you can't win. And so part of that calculation, Jason, I would suggest has to do with figuring out, are you going towards a model where you're paying a per bid solicitation fee to a contractor, for example, to help you with bid development? Or there are many, many companies of significant size or even smaller companies where they might have someone where that person is either dedicated to bid writing, and now you have a fixed ongoing cost. And now when you have a fixed ongoing cost, and I don't know what your size is or how you're set up for something like that, but it's a different calculation, right? Because if you have someone and you tell that person your job is to respond to bids, at that point, you want that person to respond to 50 bids a year, right? Because you already have that cost. So where are you in your development? Are you looking for an individual who will help consult with you on bids, or do you think you're anywhere near hiring someone?
So I think for us, it's because we're in kind of a niche market with the type of technology that we integrate, the SAP OpenText piece. Those opportunities, I think, in the government space are not as prevalent as some of the other opportunities that you see, such as anything around Microsoft Technology Suite. So there aren't as many solicitation opportunities. So I don't think we're in a place where we would hire somebody full time for this. I think it would be more of a consultant who could come in and say, hey, Ashley made a very good point here. She said, hey, you know what? Check out the NASA suite and all the contacts there. Okay, that sounds great. So that, I'll take a look at that and we'll assign somebody to go and look and try and establish as many contacts as possible. But the other thing it would be helpful is, hey, by the way, such and such agency is looking to upgrade this SAP environment. In which case, I would be keen to learn more about that and to knowing more about it, who the potential primes are, how a partner. Sorry, I just got and who the primes are and how we would how we could potentially get on a team and respond to that.
Jason, I can tell that it feels a little overwhelming, just the amount of things that we're telling you. And the important thing is you don't have to do it all at once. Ashley made some really good points about specific things you can do. There is no one way that people achieve success in government contracting. But the important thing, and I think this as a business person, is that you go take a few steps down a road and see if it bears fruit or see if it makes sense to continue. And I think if you do that in some of the ways that Ashley described, that would be beneficial. But certainly, let me ask you this question. Is the scope of what you do, are you only willing to do precisely the integrations that you've described, or are you willing to maybe do things that are close to that, but not quite that, in order to gain some traction?
Well, it's an interesting question because obviously we've got very senior level consultants who specialize in this skill set, specialize in this type of technology. So, I guess it kind of depends on what you mean, because it is a kind of specialized, it might be strange for them to do something else.
Yeah, and we employ programmers, so I'm not suggesting that they completely change their careers, but I'm suggesting or trying to suggest that if you're willing to do something that is close to what you do, but not exactly what you're looking for, you're going to create opportunities to do business with the government. You have significant commercial past performance, but you could ultimately supplement that by getting a little bit of work here and there that may not be exactly what you want to do, but is close enough to it where you're willing to do it, if that makes sense. So I'm just suggesting that you'd be open to maybe broadening your scope in the short term to try to get some traction, maybe a small project with a municipality or a county or state government, and that will pay dividends later.
Yeah. So there are small adjustments in either direction where, we could potentially entertain things that aren't totally on scope. But I will tell you that one of the best driving force behind our success so far has been our focus on what we do.
Well, keep going. And if you have additional questions as we go further into today's session, raise your hand and we'll bring you back in.
You got it.
Thanks for joining us, Jason.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick.
And so, Ashley,
Ashley.
yes,
Thank you, Jason.
So, Ashley, we talked a little bit about process and how there's just a lot of soft costs involved in managing government sales pipeline. So, I wanted to ask you just a little bit about what are some of the tools or methodologies you recommend for tracking government sales processes and pipelines? And then after that, we're going to go to Teresa, who's already joined us.
I think that's an excellent question. I think that you want to start with the fundamentals, right? So you identify your targeted market, the who and the how, because it's oftentimes that the how, the process for getting on an IDIQ for a brand new business is going to be way longer than capturing a simplified acquisition or micro purchase. So it really, your strategy and where your efforts are best spent definitely depends on the who and the how. From there, it's really very sales 101. I would definitely recommend having a CRM. You want to be able to track where these leads are in your pipeline. Who have I met with? Because it's really super embarrassing, to reach out to the same person for the same thing. It's going to be far more organic, and you never want to just email spam the government, right? These should be tailored outreach attempts to what you're trying to accomplish that are consistent with your goals. And if you haven't identified your targeted market and what the market looks like out there, it becomes very impossible to establish goals. And a lot of folks think their government contracting strategy is going to look like this. And in reality, it's more like this, because there is that learning curve that's applicable, but that doesn't mean that you can't start today. Get in the process of sending the emails, get a feel for the responses you're getting back, what the requirements are. And for goodness sakes, be sure to review the website before the meeting. Make sure if there's anything on there that's basic information that you've already covered it and you can speak intelligently about it or ask specific questions during the meeting. That always does help make a good first impression.
And Ashley, that's tremendous. You mentioned two things, and these are topics that come up in MyGovWatch Live all the time. And I just like you to define your terms for the audience. You mentioned the simplified acquisition threshold and the micro purchase threshold. Can you just go a little bit further with those so that folks who are not familiar with those terms know what they are?
Absolutely. The micro purchase threshold, basically every contracting officer and project manager in the government has what's called a procurement card or P card. And because, micro purchases are so low risk, they're able to charge on that credit card up to $3,500 for services or $10,000 for products. So those are the threshold. What that means is there won't be a solicitation for it. They can pick up the phone and call you. A lot of repeat business is captured through micro purchase or procurement cards. And then the simplified acquisition threshold is $250,000. So any contract under that dollar amount is already by default set aside for small businesses. That means the big guys aren't your competition, and you have a better chance of winning as long as you're responsive and responsible in the $0 to $250,000 range as a new contractor.
It's a huge point, and it's very important that people who are with us understand what those things are federally, because there are a lot of people who wrongly assume that everything that they sell is going to go to a solicitation. It's simply not the case. If you sell something that you are able to sell below those thresholds, it pays dividends, especially if you can craft something, right? If you're in a service business, if you can design some statement of work that falls below that, you're able to stay below that threshold, and that has its own benefits. So great stuff. And Teresa Nortillo is with us. Teresa, welcome. Where are you joining us from, and what do you do?
Welcome. I'm in the Chicago area. I am an independent contractor, and I have been doing economic development strategies for about 30 years now, off and on with various companies. But my point in for joining the call is that I recently, well, last year I was hired on a contract as a subcontractor for a company that contracts with EDA. And so this is a new foray for me into how the federal government contracts out their research services. So my primary work is in economic impact analysis. And so right now we're looking at some disaster recovery and economic impacts of the disaster and how to develop strategies that allow for quicker recovery. So as I get more into this, I'm looking at trying to get on more teams that do this same kind of work. So I didn't know where to go to kind of put that out there, that I have this experience in the EDA space, and then maybe bring that to other companies that are doing the same thing.
Sure. And before I turn it over to Ashley, I just want to ask a few questions to make sure, for the benefit of anyone listening. So EDA, the Economic Development Agency, is that right?
Administration. I don't think
Administration, part of the Department of Commerce, if I'm not
correct. Department of Commerce.
Okay, and so you are currently subcontracting with a company now, yes?
Correct.
Okay, and are you a solo practitioner? Do you have a staff?
Solo.
Okay, so that makes you a woman-owned business, which is good, and Ashley can talk about that. So are you only interested in being a subcontractor, or are you also interested in becoming a prime contractor?
Well, it depends. I don't think I could carry a prime as a prime on my own. So, I mean, I'd have to get subs underneath me. So, depending on the scope of work, you know, it varies. I mean, I
rule it out.
I definitely could have a prime, but I couldn't carry it all on my own.
So Ashley, what are your thoughts on all of this?
So that's a very unique situation. My first question would be, you mentioned that you are an independent contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you as a person or your business?
My business.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a 1099 under my company.
Okay. So you already have a decent track record of corporate experience to grow
Sure.
from. That's excellent.
Yeah.
I would absolutely look into the woman-owned small business set aside. Are you registered in SAM yet?
No.
Okay. So SAM would be your prerequisite, and that has been a beast. So government changed that process a little bit this year. If you need, anybody can reach out to me if you get stuck in these processes, or obviously your local Apex accelerator may have to wait a little while for an appointment. So if it's urgent, just reach out to me directly. Now, as far as your strategy goes, this contract that you're working on right now, where you are the subcontractor to the prime who has the contract with EDA, this is federal past performance you are gaining right now. So I would absolutely want that to be on your capability statement. You can use that federal past performance to become prime if you want, or you can leverage it in other areas and stay out of the bid process and do the work as a sub. I do know there's a couple agencies, I want to say USAID may also be interested in your services as well.
Yeah, I've looked at USAID for sure.
I had a meeting with them recently, and they're very much looking into the resiliency aspect and sort of the risk assessment areas in different areas, including weather monitoring and other things. But nonetheless, an outreach attempt to the prime contractors that are playing in your industry. Ideally, you want to get on as many teams as you can. Mm-hmm. So my question is, were you included in the proposal when the prime submitted?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And how long is the contract term length?
It was 3 months, then it was given a extension for 3 months. And so it ends April 30th.
Okay. So you want to set yourself up with something after that. I
Right.
would definitely get registered in SAM, create your capability statement,
Mhm,
apply for the woman-owned small business
mhm,
certification,
mhm.
and make sure that this past performance is on your statement, and start getting that out to other prime contractors. Even I would look at even award notices. When you see an award notice where
Yeah.
prime contractors recently won a contract, but all of these things are a little bit behind the curve. Ideally, you want to be worked into the solicitation to
Right.
say, and that you have a much better chance of getting built into it as a company, a small business with set asides. So you can leverage those set asides with these larger companies that otherwise, wouldn't be able to bid without you as a teaming partner.
Right,
So
right.
we could get into mentor protege agreements and a whole bunch there are a lot of opportunities for you in the space, absolutely, even as a solopreneur. Now, because you provide services, it may be difficult for you to be a prime contractor if the solicitation includes subcontracting limitations. So in a lot of cases, the solicitation will say the prime has to self-perform 60% of the contract or 40% of the contract if it's a small business set aside. So in that case, it wouldn't work for you to sub out all the work. You would kind of want to stay in the subcontracting space,
Right.
but that doesn't include the micro purchases and some simplified acquisitions, not all of them. In some cases, you are able to sub out the work. But if the dollar amount's low enough, you could be able to self-perform for the government. There are also, depending on what the outcome of this current contract is, I would see sort of what the next steps are. Try to get yourself in a position to be a named subcontractor. And by doing so,
what do you mean by that?
That means that you would have to have an agreement in place with the prime prior to the solicitation hitting the street, and they would build you into the proposal more or less as an expert or as a subcontractor.
Okay.
And what that will do at contract closeout is it will ensure that you get a CPARS review. CPARS, another acronym, is Contractor Performance Rating System.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a Google review for the government. Not every citizen has access to these CPARS reviews, but they are checked and they will follow you. So it's definitely building your track record of past performance.
So getting back to that named subcontractor agreement, is that something that every company that contracts and has subs should be aware of, that exists?
If they are utilizing subs in a solicitation, there's a rule in the FAR that you have to have an agreement in place with your subcontractors.
Okay. So,
and a lot of times, especially on the more complex government contracts, they'll even have flow down clauses. So the prime, is in essence responding, putting their neck on the line, but there are certain rules in that contract that they have to make you sign off on that you have to be in compliance with too as the
right.
sub.
Yeah. And I've had to jump through some of those hoops already. Yeah.
So Teresa, just something else, a question, or what we're talking about here causes me to put this on the table as well. There are some solicitations where subcontracting is an evaluation criteria. So you want to have some insight and you want to try to understand what are the solicitations that your prime contractors are responding to, and are the evaluation criteria giving any weight in the evaluation to subcontracting? Because that is what I found to be where they want these subs to be named in the bid process in particular. A lot of times, if that is not a big part of the bid process, they don't care if someone's being named as a sub. They just want you to do some subcontracting in accordance with the GSA contract or what have you. But once you see that subcontracting is an evaluation factor,
Gotcha.
That's where Ashley's saying you definitely want to make sure they make promises to you in writing, because they might even need to show those promises within the bid process.
Right,
Great point, Nick.
right. No,
Thank
that
you.
makes a lot of sense.
And don't let anybody make you sign an exclusive agreement, because if it's your mission to get on as many teams as possible, primes would like to, you know, in the first draft of the boilerplate agreement they send you, you know, in the fine print, you'll find, oh, we're exclusive, meaning you can't work with anyone else. Don't go for that.
So here's a question that came up earlier. If I'm listed as a sub on one contract or one proposal response, can I be listed on another proposal response for the same RFP or the same? Okay, so I can be on different teams, but going for the same project. Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I have a current client now who is on 4 teams simultaneously. And we had a consultation the other day, and she was super proud of herself because she was stuck in one of those exclusive agreements for a long time. I had her hands tied behind her back. And the first prime that reached out to her, wanted to work with her, tried to put that clause in there. And she said, absolutely not. Guess what? They took it out and they signed her on anyway.
Okay.
And now she's got 4 more. So there are 4 chances now that she's got to be a part of that IDIQ contract.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's very helpful information. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So Teresa, please stay with us. And if we have time, we can come back if you have follow-up questions, and you'll certainly be invited to next month's session. But thank you for joining us, and please raise your hand if you'd like to rejoin later.
Okay, I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Our pleasure. And so we have with us now, I believe it is Angela Seymour. Angela, welcome. And we just
Hi,
need
Angela. Good to see you.
Just need you to unmute, Angela.
Okay. Hey, sorry. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, how are
Ashley
you?
knows who I am, so.
Welcome, welcome. And for the sake of everyone who does not know who you are, what do you do and where are you joining us from?
So my history is I have actually 7.
Okay, folks, that is a mistake that I've made. Angela, I have been trying to demote some of the folks who joined us to attendees, and I mistakenly demoted you to an attendee. So you're about to get another promotion. The foibles of live broadcasting. So Angela, let's see if you can join us again.
Okay. Hey.
My apologies. I'll be more careful.
That's all right. My question is, does the promotion come with a raise? Because, you know, that's really important, especially in government. So my background is I have 17 years in public procurement. Ashley knows who I am because I used to be with the Massachusetts PTAC, which I guess is now the Massachusetts Predators, or APEX Predators.
Accelerators.
Accelerators.
Apex
Predators,
Accelerators.
Tomato.
Does sound like a sports team, doesn't it?
Right? When somebody told me the new name, I went, wow, I did not see that coming. I gotta tell you. So now I'm joining from South Carolina, but I work for a company remotely that is currently in Pennsylvania. They also belong to the PTAC, so I have contacts with their PTACs. I am the new government business development manager for this company. It's a data entry company. It's kind of like similar to Jason's. It's a very niche company, just because all we do is data entry. Mostly, we have currently a contract with the state of Alaska. And then we also have we have some bigger contracts with some private side as well too. So my question to Ashley is, because most of it is in what I've done is in SLED or state government. Where is the best place to find either a SLED contacts list or OSBDU list?
For SLED, I would probably have to say MyGovWatch. Would that be accurate, Nick?
Absolutely, and thanks for the promo.
You're welcome. There's no magic database that has all that information in it that's, you know, publicly accessible out there. But for the SLED stuff, I would definitely take a look at MyGovWatch. But for the federal, now here's the thing, Angela, is you don't want to email blast, right? You don't want to spend your time on agencies that you know aren't buying what you sell. So for data entry, look at admin support, right? The contract vehicle that comes to mind is the LTask. So maybe starting with subcontracting with the LTask incumbents might get you a leg in the door, but targeting administrative support. Now, I've never seen a solicitation that is just for data entry. So it's possible that you are another part of a larger contract. So subcontracting might be what drives revenue in the door most urgently. And to execute that process, I always start by first reviewing the prime contractor. You know, I've got to find them first, review their website, register if they have a process, reach out to the contract manager. One great thing about contract vehicles is they always have basically their contract managers listed, and that information is publicly accessible. When it comes to the OSDBU, you only really want to focus on those OSDBUs that are the customers of your prime targets, right? Because they can be a great referral resource for you. They are all over LinkedIn. I would say, guys, don't underestimate the free tool that's at your disposal. There's over 3 million government employees on LinkedIn. I think there was more tens of thousands of government pages. So going to the OSDBU, the agency OSDBU website, the points of contact are listed on there. You may have to build a spreadsheet or put it in your CRM or whatever, but go to each of their sites individually, and you can kind of start to build your own database of contacts.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And thank
You're very
you.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Angela, I have a question for you. As someone who spent 17 years on the other side, what are some things that you are now realizing in your newer role that are just totally new ideas to you that that never occurred to you when you were on the other side of the table?
That's a great
Well, and
question.
it's funny because, Ashley talked about wanting to grow up or Nick, I guess you talked about wanting to grow up and being government contracting. Nobody ever grows up and says, how is a fire truck bought? But I can tell you the ladder truck is $1.5 billion. So
Wow.
those are things that you learn afterwards. But I guess the difficulties of thinking that it's going to be easy to get out and start targeting, especially the SLED agencies. Because from what I'm seeing, the solicitations are mostly coming from the state and local side. So it's not as an easy task to get out there and just start targeting these agencies because, there's so many and there's so much overturn. It's hard to kind of nail down that contact that you need to speak to every time.
Absolutely. And obviously, we believe that MyGovWatch provides that value at the state and local level as well as federal. So we appreciate, the opportunities that we get from yourself and others as well. Thank you for joining us, and just feel free to raise your hand if, and by the way, do you feel that Ashley's covered what you were asking thoroughly enough?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I certainly don't have anything to add to it. I thought it was great.
Thank you, Angela, for the question. Reach out anytime.
Will do. Absolutely.
And thanks for joining us, Angela. And so before we go further to, and by the way, we're going to Heather next. So Heather, you're going to get a prompt momentarily asking you to join us as a as a panelist. We have a question from the audience in writing, and this is from John Barker. Good afternoon, Nick and Ashley. What are the biggest mistakes early stage GovCon companies make in their initial journey? Great question. What are your thoughts there, Ashley?
Register in SAM and immediately start bidding.
Absolutely.
That's probably the biggest waste of resources that that a small business can make, because there's a lot more strategy involved to it. And in full transparency, the proposals won't be nearly as difficult once you have the conversations, right? When you have the conversations, you learn what your customers' pain points are, and then you can speak very specifically in your proposal to those pain points. Imagine, the concept. I see contractors all the time. I call it blind bidding. More successful government contractors build their pipeline out. If they see a solicitation that they didn't already know about, the first question they ask themselves is, have I ever met with a customer? And if they can't say yes to that question, it's a no-go. And that's very serious. It's not in all industries, but if you're in the service industry, it's very, very common of a question to see in your go, no-go analysis. So then the second biggest mistake would be taking a one and done approach to things like SAM capability statement. I have clients all the time who send to me, a Word document that, anyone who receives it can easily edit it. Maybe it's outdated information. Maybe they're missing product service codes, or they say they don't accept credit cards on SAM, and just make simple mistakes along the way that if you don't go back and optimize those items when you have the knowledge, when you gain the knowledge, that could really affect your visibility and exposure. So be thorough and dot your I's and cross your T's as you're going through these steps, and you will set yourself up for success. Don't skip any steps. Have a solid foundation.
Absolutely, and I would echo everything that you've just shared, Ashley. I would also say that there are lots of folks who look at a government sale as somehow fundamentally different in kind than any other sale. Now, there are certainly lots of things that are unique about it, but it's fundamentally the same thing. The additional complexities are around having insight and having the information and clarity to make good decisions and to know who to contact. And I think Ashley's touched on a lot of those themes in addition to some of the things that I've said. So John, thanks for your question, and please stay with us. So now what I'd like to do is, and before we go to you, Heather, I just have a question for Ashley, because Ashley, you mentioned capability statements. For those who are very new, who may be with us, who may not have heard or may not be familiar with what a capability statement is, what is it and what's the role of it in federal contracting, for example?
So your capability statement is your primary marketing tool. Solicitations will ask for it. Prime contractors will ask for it. If you so much as send an email to the government and you don't attach it, they're going to ask for it. So before you even get started, have one ready to go. This is building brand awareness. It is meant to be a verifiable document that any government employee or prime contractor can use to evaluate you. It includes your pertinent corporate data, your differentiators, your core competencies, your experience or past performance, your pertinent government codes. So it's a great place to even hyperlink your professional LinkedIn profile or your dynamic small business search profile, or hyperlink your website. Any opportunity that you have to make it easier for your customers to do business with you, of course you take it. So that capability statement, there are actually 4 different types. So the version I'm talking about is basically a version that's for your general marketing. You also have solicitation specific. You have agency specific, and it could also be prime contractor specific. So there are different use cases for a capability statement, but it is a fundamental asset that you need to have. Make sure that you put some effort into your branding. For those of you that are new, you want a high resolution logo. Your entire document should be branded. And that's one of my favorite things to do personally. So if anyone needs help with that area, feel free to reach out. But this is basically the first impression that a lot of your future buyers are going to have of your business. So you don't want any misspellings. You do want to articulate clearly your core competencies and what you're good at. You want to stay focused in your statement and align your past performance with your core competencies. If you're one who is dabbling in multiple industries, I'd recommend having a separate capability statement for each of those industries, because at the end of the day, your buyers have different pain points and different value propositions.
And Ashley, do you do anything, or do you provide any services, or do you give people feedback on their capability statements?
Yeah, actually, I do capability statement reviews at no cost. So if you have one or you want to create one and send a draft over, I'll pop my email address in the chat for everyone. And if you do need help with a professional design, we can absolutely do that too. There are some templates that are floating out there online. I'm not a huge fan of templates because I believe it should be an aesthetic design consistent with your branding. But they're out there nonetheless. So you definitely have options. If this isn't your strong suit, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's certainly better than making a negative first impression.
Absolutely. And so next we're going to go to Heather Al-Nimri. Heather, are you with us?
I am.
And Heather, are you sticking with audio only?
Yes.
And that's just fine. Thank you for joining us. Heather, what do you do and where are you joining us from?
I am the Director of Contracts and Compliance for J2 Medical Supply, and we are a small business, Black owned, and we manufacture all types of PPE. So I use SAM as a resource for historical spending for past awards, or sometimes I can find totals per previous purchase orders. But I'm wondering where to look in SAM or anywhere that doesn't require a paid subscription to find more detailed spend information. Because sales by PO are nice. However, without knowing the line items that are on the PO, it's not really very useful. So when I look at a lot of this past data, it's way more than what I'm looking for, and I would like to find more specifics. Is that available anywhere?
It definitely depends on what it is you're trying to find. I like USA spending. There is a lot of data in there when you download the full report. But I end up going into a rabbit hole when I run a data report because I don't know what I'm going to find until I get in there, really. So there's some areas that it lacks, like it does not have a point of contact listed in there, but it will tell you the method of purchasing, how many offers were received. It can drill down by keywords. So it's definitely a useful tool. But what more specifically are you trying to find that you cannot find in SAM? I do think that USA Spending is a more thorough tool than SAM. However, if you're talking about the SAM data bank, USA Spending and SAM data bank both source from the Federal Procurement Data System, which is fpds.gov. So it is a lot of the same information. I just happen to use USA because I find a lot more information than what SAM gives me access to.
Okay, good. Thank you. I will try that. Can you remind me what FPDS stands for?
Sure, it's Federal Procurement Data System.
Okay, and can I sneak in one extra question?
Feel free, plenty of time.
Okay, regarding past performance, J2 doesn't really have any past performance. My last employer, we had a lot of contracts that I could, refer to, and we had a very nice past performance document, but we don't have any with J2. How do I fill my capabilities statement if I don't have any past performance?
Well, going back to, I just gave you a presentation on this, so I thought I already said it, but I'm sorry, I'll add it in there. In your past performance section, remember the past performance is considered by military agencies, especially work that has been performed for a federal agency, right? Whether that's as a prime or a sub, but surely the company has had a customer. I mean, you've worked with another business, you've performed services in your industry in the past, right?
Oh, it doesn't have to be federal
I would
customers?
just call it, change your heading to say corporate experience.
Okay.
I have had folks, and because we all have to start somewhere, right? You need a capability statement. So even if all you have is professional experience, that could lead to a conversation, especially like if like Angela, you've worked with the government in the past or worked for another company that had government contracts. You may not be able to talk about specifics. However, you can reference that you are educated in this space to allow for a conversation. We all have to start somewhere. So even those of you who may not have had any business yet, if there's anyone on the call that fits that bill, and you have to use your professional experience, just make sure that you are articulating it correctly. Don't call it past performance if it was work you did as a W-2 for another company, for an example. But yeah, in your case, Heather, I would just change my heading to say either our experience or corporate experience, and I would write a well-written results-focused description for each entry and highlight those that are specific to either the opportunity that you're going after, or the agency you're going after. When I'm doing a custom statement, I like to relate, like if I detect something on the procurement forecast, I'll go and pull all the relevant experiences from my matrices and put them in a capability statement before I send it. So having that capability statement spreadsheet or matrices would be very helpful in quickly copying and pasting.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Fantastic answers, Ashley, as usual. No surprise there. Heather, thank you for joining us. Heather, did you have any follow-up questions? It looks like you've muted, so I'll take that as a no. Please stay with us. And folks, I guess I will say that Cindy, we'd like to invite you to join us momentarily by at least turning on your audio or video if you'd like. I'll give you a prompt. But before we do that, I would like to say, if you have questions, if you didn't indicate a desire to participate, now would be the time to start raising your hands. We've had lots of questions that we've answered in the chat. That's great. If you'd like to introduce your business, for example, just tell the world what you do. The link will be on YouTube in a few days, and we can just talk a little bit about what you're trying to achieve. So let me give Cindy. Okay, Cindy, you should have gotten a prompt to join us if you'd like.
I did. I thought I did. Oh,
Yep. Can you hear us?
yes, I can. Hi.
Welcome, Cindy. Welcome, Cindy. Would you like to join us by video or just audio?
I thought I was on video. No,
Okay, let me promote you.
it doesn't matter.
It's totally up to you. I'm going to give you the prompt, and we can
Okay.
either do that, or there we go. It looks like it's working. I just love using my toys. Okay. Welcome, Cindy. Cindy Preston. Cindy, where are you joining us from, and what do you do? We
Oh,
just
Cindy,
need-
you're muted.
Yep, we just need you to unmute. Cindy, we just.
Cindy, I can't hear you. You're muted.
That's
How's that?
Much
even
better.
better. That's even better.
Perfect.
I'm in Claremont, Florida. I'm moving to North Carolina in the next couple of months, so I'm going to be in limbo for a little while. And I haven't. I just got something accidentally federally. It wasn't a contract, but yeah, I printed a couple of books for the U.S. Army. But I have a lot of experience with city, state, and local, kind of contracts and just jobs, just regular jobs. And you're right when you said they order over and over and over again, but they've been ordering with me, thankfully.
Excellent. Congratulations.
But I do I do graphic design and printing and mailing, and I have a partner agency that does my digital advertising, and I've done a lot of contracts. And Ashley, you said something that really hit home with me. Blind bidding. That's what I've been doing all these years. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to stop that.
But are you having success from it?
No, I mean, it's like I have a very, very low percentage. I mean, I quit for a couple of years because of COVID, and I actually won the Florida State Driver's License Handbook contract.
Did you? No kidding. My son just took that.
Okay, so that was when everything fell off the cliff, and no one could get paper. It was just a total disaster. So I ended up not doing it, and they were mad at me, and I'm sure they found out within time that it wasn't completely my fault that I couldn't honor, the contract. But so anyway, I would really like to, learn more about, what you've been, saying today.
Sure. I mean, I definitely do offer coaching. So I welcome anybody who's interested to shoot me an email, and I'll give you the calendar link. And, certainly not to exclude APACs. I'm not sure what resources or revenue is like, but, I have to say that a lot of the fundamental things, can be provided by free counseling at PTAC. However, I understand that now that you have a few contracts under your belt, you probably want to use those to get your next ones and sort of refine your strategy and your approach. So it'd definitely be awesome to have a conversation a little deeper about marketing and kind of tailoring your outreach efforts to sort of get your foot in the door. Because if it's this easy for you to get business without bidding, why would we waste resources in something that doesn't work versus what we know already does work? So we'll kind of talk offline a little bit more about that contract that went south, because that might play a role in what our next steps are. we can figure that out on a separate conversation.
I was not able to see your email address in the chat. For some reason, it said the chat was disabled.
Yeah, we're getting that, and I don't know why, because in the background I've been trying to figure out why it looks disabled. So bottom line is, this will be on YouTube, and Ashley's email address will be in the YouTube link. So if you go to MyGovWatch Live on YouTube in a few days, it'll be there. Ashley can read it again, and while Ashley's talking, I'll try to figure out how to enable the chat, although I can see it. But I just want to go back to something that you said.
Okay.
Cindy, am I to understand that you fell into government contracting? Could you just say that again?
Well, yes, kind of. I mean, I had a friend that suggested it. She said, I mean, she's a really good friend and mentor. She was a marketing director for one of my I mean, I don't know, long story, but she goes, you should apply to become a woman-owned business. And I'm like, okay, I'll look into it. You know, so I did that, and then one thing led to another, and now I have so many initials, you know, under my under my name. And I just got my GSA contract. That took forever. And
Wow, you're on a schedule. You
Yes.
omitted that completely.
Yes.
So
just recently. So
awesome. Congratulations on that.
trying to learn how to, you know, work that.
So definitely there's a revenue threat. I know that there are conversations being had about eliminating the revenue minimum, but we got to generate 25,000 on that schedule in the first 2 years, or they're going to take it back away. And I know that was a process for you to go through. So,
And there was a pause in COVID, like the company, because I actually, you know, I tried to do it myself the first round, and that didn't work out so well. So then I hired a company to do it. Then we stopped for 2 years, and, you know, it's just been forever.
well, definitely that adds an extra layer of urgency to the marketing, because you definitely want to get some traction on that while you have it, especially in the beginning months. Set yourself up some customers. You could figure out through the data, you know, which agencies are buying your service on a GSA schedule, and then, you know, market your schedule specifically to them with your capability statement. So make sure that I know that when you got your schedule, they gave you like a logo to use on your marketing assets. Pop your GSA schedule number next to that logo, put it on your capability statement if it's not already. I mean, that's immediately telling.
Yes, I have that. I have it on my email signature. I
good.
don't even know.
Well, you're proving everybody wrong in the industry who says it takes a while.
No, it hasn't come through. You know, the big contract hasn't come through yet, but I hope it will soon.
You're building past performance enough to get there, so you're on the right track.
It's refreshing to hear your story, Cindy, because so many people who join us, you know, they struggle and they don't know what to do next. And it sounds like your path has been rather straightforward. So it does happen. And that should, you know, encourage people who are listening or with us now or listening later to keep the faith. It's amazing how people who are busy and who do things all the time, things just fall in their lap. It's almost like, you know, there's somehow that happens. I don't know how it happens. People who wake up early in the morning, things tend to fall up in their lap.
So it's not easy. I mean, I feel like I lose a lot more than I win. And I just have to, like, you know, have amnesia and just move on. Sometimes I get upset, you know, when I put so much work into it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes like a week to do, you know, a proposal and a lot of money, and you have to do it just exactly the way that, you know, they want it. And then crickets.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what I'm going to try to do, what you said, Ashley, was before I send another RFP out, I think I'm just going to make a connection with the buyer, just say, hey, I'm interested, you know, and try to, you know, think of some questions or
look at procurement forecasts. If you see anything about now, marketing agencies that have government contracts would definitely be a great source for you as far as subcontracting revenue, and allow you to leverage that set aside with companies that otherwise, you know, don't have it. But also looking at
before.
You did
A couple years ago.
It didn't work so well, or it did? No.
Okay.
Go after, make sure that the liaisons have your statement on file. And when you review those procurement forecasts, that's a great leaping off point for you to have a conversation with the decision makers. So be sure to leverage the information that's out there at your disposal to break the ice and open a door. Attending, and I know this is like old school, but attending these conferences, I've had clients win contracts just because they sat next to somebody at a table at a conference who overheard what their business does. Oh, hey, I got that on my forecast. I need that. Let's exchange cards. Make sure you're armed with a lot of business cards. Don't do the glossy front guys because people like to write on them. So just have your business card, maybe have a QR code to your capability statement when you go to those events. And it is a great way to meet decision makers. Showing up at their industry days, you know, even the virtual events, when you pop into the chat and you're in the virtual event, drop your elevator pitch and your contact information in that chat. What I do, even if I know the answer to a question, or even if they said it before, like I'll just listen throughout the presentation and I'll write down questions to ask at the end, because most of them have a Q&A period. So when there's an opportunity, and I got this advice from a government agency specifically, she said, every chance that you have to speak is a chance for you to pitch your services. So when you come on here to ask your questions, tell us who you are and what you do, and then ask your question. You never know who on the line might need your services. So just get yourself out there, make sure everyone knows you have a schedule. And even in those email outreach efforts, because if you have it in your signature, even sometimes strategically placing your set aside logo and your GSA schedule information in your email signature will immediately draw their attention and prompt that they open that email and respond to you. So it is a simplified method of purchasing for them. So definitely hit the ground heavy on that schedule.
So Cindy, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a customer and user of MyGovWatch, and please stay with us. And if you think of anything else, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another person, a young man by the name of, I think, Antoine. So Antoine, I'm going to turn on your audio, and I'll invite you to be a panelist as well. And looks like that's going to work. Can you hear us, Antoine?
I can hear you. All right, I can be seen. Look at that. I made the screen. Boy, I don't feel good right now.
Welcome, Antoine. Where are you joining us from, and what do you do?
I am in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a web developer and social media marketer, brand developer for organizations and companies is what I do.
Well, that's fantastic.
On a good day. On a good day.
Excellent.
And tell us a little bit more. It looks like you're wanting to do some more of this kind of thing for government agencies. Are you doing anything for them now?
Currently, no. So I have completely revamped an older business that I've been doing for roughly 20 years in this space, in which I was like the last person I was on, I think Cindy, I kind of fell into it by a government agency needing rebranding in Washington State. And a friend of mine was on their board and worked with them, and then told me to go through all the bells and whistles to get signed up. I got the gig, and it was a kind of baptism by fire kind of situation of learning kind of what to do and not to do. And so now that I've disposed of that business, I've kind of been away from it for a couple of years. I now only look 25. And so as you can tell, you know, some time has lapsed. I would like to know, what is a better way to go about positioning this business currently to start putting myself in the viewfinders of federal work?
Ashley, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Being registered in the CM obviously is the first step. That's your eligibility. That is more of a complex process this year than it has been in years past. However, you know, plan a good 4 weeks to dedicate to that process.
Okay.
Once you're active in SAM, make sure you complete the manual steps in the dynamic small business search, because that's how you're going to be found in the market research phase of the procurement cycle, which happens before a solicitation and after the need has been determined. The government utilizes your services. If you've been on LinkedIn at all and you see all the posts that's coming out of the government agency pages, you'll see how many marketers they're actually using. I would also recommend identifying your buyers, whether those be prime contractors or government agencies in usaspending.gov. If you need help with that, that happens to be, I'm a huge data nerd, guys. Like, if market research is where you're struggling, I'm your girl. But making sure that you understand how they buy. There's probably going to be a contract vehicle, though I don't know what the name would be off the top of my head, that would appeal to you. Maybe even look at the Evolve. I think that's the one. Any incumbent, and I believe that's out for competition right now or will be soon. But any incumbent who has a contract vehicle that is providing your kind of services, or even if you're a better part to a whole, like web development, you're kind of getting into the IT space, right? So you're in a marketing space, and then the website, you're in IT space. I've even seen a lot of graphic design contracts going under a 541519, which is an IT code, right? So don't spend too much emphasis or don't put too much weight on NAICS codes, right? You're going to want to use keywords and product service codes to search for opportunities, not NAICS codes, because yours are going to be all across the board.
That makes sense.
And it's best because for you specifically, you know, if you see an opportunity that comes out and that NAICS code isn't on your profile, you're going to have to go and add it to SAM before you respond. But definitely focus more effort, probably 80% effort in marketing, 20% solicitations, and don't exclude the SLED stuff. Like city, state, and local is a great way to get your foot in the door. Oftentimes those solicitations are far less demanding than federal. And when it comes to establishing a record of experience, because I think you said that you kind of restarted this new business and rebranded, it's a great way to, you know, build relationships and get some business in the door, because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Nick, but the SLED procurement process is shorter than the federal process, is it not, in most cases?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the time to bid is 3 to 4 weeks, and they're going to have decisions on many, many contracts, you know, within a month or two.
The register as a vendor with your state, you can do that even before you're registered in SAM. Register as a vendor with your state and look at the state procurement site. Look at what they've bought this year. Reach out to some folks. I bet, you know, like I said earlier, if you kick rocks over, you never know what might crawl out. And they might have something, you know, very small and minimal that you could get on to get started.
Yeah, I like kicking rocks. That works.
Kick over rocks.
Oh, right.
Maybe you'll even kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
There you go.
There we go.
Work smarter, not harder. That's what I always say.
I like that. Thank you. That helps a lot.
You're very welcome.
So, Antoine, I hesitate to try to add to the eloquent answer that Ashley gave. Any follow-up questions?
No, I think definitely to start there. Like I said, the first time it literally fell in my lap. And so I think the process happened so quick. I was just doing like what was told to me, but I wasn't really understanding what I was doing and how I was setting myself up. Especially because it was outside of my state. I didn't know, I was completely lost. And so when I saw this opportunity to get on the call and to learn, I had to address the question.
Yeah, and please continue to join us. You're on our mailing list. You should hear about this event once a month. I think Ashley will be with us again. And we encourage you to you know, just keep in touch.
Great, will do. Thank you.
Thanks for joining. And folks, I'm just going to put it out there just as a sort of a last call to see if there are other questions. We're just about an hour and a half. It's not a hard stop, but if we don't have additional questions, we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping and we'll wrap it up. So Ashley, why don't you read off your email address I haven't
Oh,
been able to
yes.
get the chat to work.
Sure, it is Ashley D. So ASHLEY, D as in Delta, at duweldev.com. I'll spell that as well. It's D as in Delta, U, W, E, L as in Lima, D as in Delta, E, V as in Victor.com. So Ashley D at duweldev.com.
And like I had mentioned earlier, we will put Ashley's email address in the set or in the YouTube page where we keep these videos. And so, folks, with that, I'm just going to call it a wrap and say that'll do it for today's edition of MyGovWatch Live. Don't forget to connect with Ashley on social media. She's a frequent poster and contributor in different groups on Facebook and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're not already a subscriber, start your free 14-day trial of MyGovWatch today. If you want to win government contracts for less, you'll be glad you did. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Thank you, folks. Bye-bye.